Hello and welcome to The Final Bell, the official Geelong Cats podcast. It is great to have you with us for another week. We are brought to you by Lake Imaging. We appreciate their support, and a huge thanks to the team at Lake Imaging who are celebrating 20 years of radiology services in Victoria. Lake Imaging are proud to be the preferred medical imaging provider of our beloved Cats at the Geelong Football Club. I'm joined once again, which is my great pleasure, Tom Lonergan. Domsy, great to see you.
Hello, Lingy. How are we?
Yeah, very well, thank you. We've got a fantastic show coming up. We're going to be joined by not the Milestone Man, but the father of the Milestone Man.
Beautiful. Johnny.
John Dangerfield will join us. We'll get to your questions a little bit later on as well. We really appreciate those people who send them in. But let's talk footy straight away. Do you want to start on a really good quality win, or do you want to start on a little bit of injury news?
Well, I think we'll cover off the game quickly. It was another comprehensive win by Geelong with an even spread of goal kickers. Jezza obviously kicked 3, Stengel 3, Blitzarves 2. That's. I'm looking at the goal scorers there and go, that's exactly what Chris Scott would want to see moving into finals.
Yeah, and also the way that they approached the game, attacked the game, you could see the sharpness of mind that, okay, there's still a couple of players being managed for a week, but we're on. The big stuff's coming. 7-2 first quarter just made a statement of, no, this is not just going to be a little letdown week. We're sharp. It was a really professional performance.
Yeah, it was, Lee. And look, you look at Mark Blitzarves, he's done it again. Another great performance by him on the weekend. Second best, had the week off the week before. So again, just another sign of Chris Scott and the coaching group managing these players so they're cherry ripe for a couple of weeks' time.
And you've got the competitive nature for spots, which we've touched on a little bit over the last couple of weeks. So again, players wanting to put their best foot forward. Now, I think there's no doubt whatsoever that Max Holmes was going to be important into the run-up to in the finals. But over the last 2 weeks, Maxie Holmes has just said, hey, I'm not just, am I in, am I out? I'm probably going to be important. He is crucial to their finals chances, and his last 2 games in particular have been so impressive. He's taken a little leap late in this season.
Oh, he has, and just another young player that they've unearthed. I mean, if you go back and have a look at that trade, it's going to turn out to be one of the great trades, I think. Geelong swapped their future first-round pick to get back into the draft in, 2019? I think it was the end of 2019 when after Richmond won the grand final. And now you look at Max Holmes and go, wow, he's a 250-game player, the way he's playing. He's got that speed.
He wins it on the inside too as well.
He's got a good mix on the combination of his game. So, look, he, along with, there's plenty of other young guys coming through, which we've mentioned and we'll continue to do, but they've just got a great balance at the moment.
Let's get to the slight downer of the really impressive performance. First of all, Reece Stanley, he comes off, subbed off in the third quarter. Mark O'Connor replaces him. It was strange watching it on television, Domsy, because Reece looked okay, but then the physio ran to him and said, I'm not happy with something, come off. On the bench, he didn't look overly worried, but you're never sure. Maybe it was more precautionary. There is certainly bigger fish to fry coming up. But it's a little bit of a concern. I'm just holding off on Jez for 2 seconds. But Reece he's been out for one, come back in, now out for another, you'd assume. Johnny Segler has shown that he can jump in for a week. But at the moment, there's a little bit, how's Reece going to be for that first final?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think that's the only bit that I'd be slightly worried about at the moment. He's been, as you mentioned, Ling, he hasn't had a great month of football in terms of he's been out for one. Come back and played probably his best game of the year, though, against St Kilda. So he does perform pretty well off the back of a spell. But in terms of consistency, I think they would like to have him ready for this week, moving into a qualifying final in a couple of weeks' time.
Given there's the pre-finals bye. So the pre-finals bye, it works well for the next person we're about to talk about. But then you also don't want to, say a player misses the final round this week against West Coast, who's probably maybe needs a run or would be good to have a run, and then they miss the following one. So they've effectively missed 2 weeks in a row, and then their qualifying final. So the pre-finals bye can work both ways. Let's get to the other one. Jeremy Cameron, the hamstring concern. it was funny again watching the TV and the commentary team made note that Jez was sitting on the bench for an extended period of time in that last quarter, but there wasn't a real clear reason. Was he just the game was over, finals around the corner, just coming off? Turns out after the game, a little bit of a hamstring concern, not playing this week, pre-finals bye, and the club is confident that he should be right for the qualifying final. But it does throw a little bit of a twist into the lead up to that qualifying final.
Oh, it does. And when you think about a normal hamstring is 21 days. Well, from when they played to potentially they're looking at a Friday night, they're going to finish on top. Yep. Usually the team on top plays on the Friday night. Gives them the most break if they were to lose for the next week. So that's 20 days.
20 days.
That's 20 days. So, and throw in his history, I think there'd be some genuine concerns downstairs, and not to sensationalise it, but what do you do? Because you're bringing back 20 days, which is right on the border, and he does it again. He's done. That's done for the year. So,
this is where the medical staff, conditioning staff, and coaching staff, this is where they earn their money.
Yeah, absolutely.
with the decisions that they make. So, and you and I sitting here right now, we don't know the severity of the hamstring or anything like that. It's certainly on the minor side of things.
But it is a hamstring. We know that. It is
a hamstring. So here's your two options. You do that, 20 days, plays. Does it again, probably done for the season. Gets through, good as gold. Or you take this week break, the bye break, you don't play the qualifying final and you back the boys in, they win, you get the following week off, prelim final, the risk profile has dramatically dropped. Of course you want Jeremy Cameron out there playing in a qualifying final. He is crucial to this team winning a premiership. But that is the type of discussion and debate back and forward that the medical staff, fitness staff and the coaches are going to have over the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, it is. It is, and good luck to them which way they go. I mean, the good thing, like we've spoken about all year, Lingy, is there's now a group of players that can step up and play a certain role. And I think, if the team is to lose a player, he's probably not the player they want to lose, or he's probably not the top 2 or 3 players they want to lose, because he's so versatile. He adds he's got that X factor, different dimension, his running capability, the way he gets up and down the ground, the way he helps takes the load off Tommy Hawkins. It's now just exactly what you said there, mate. It's going to be a decision on, can we get him through the qualifying in the hope that we can win that game and get through to the prelim. But then there's the other, if that happens, what's he miss? He's going to miss 4 weeks of football. So leading into a prelim. So there are those decisions and conversations that will be taking place. How much football is too much? But you'd think, what's your gut feel? What would you do if you're head coach? Do you give him an extra week and hope they get the win and get through to the prelim?
Okay, so this is completely from a place of not being privy to the exact details and conversations. As senior coach in this situation, again, perfect world, I would put it in the hands of the medical staff to make a recommendation, and I would back them in. And if they said to me that we believe he has checked each of the benchmarks that we're after, he's hit the speeds that he needs to hit, and he's recovered from the sessions with those speeds, and we are never asking a medical staff person to make 100% confidence in getting through a game, but we are highly confident that he is right to go, then I would back that in. I would trust that. And if the medical staff said, listen, we wanted one more session where he had to hit top speed under fatigue. His last session was a couple of efforts, but it's not where we want it to be. He's probably okay to play, but we need that extra session to know for sure. Then you'd probably grit the teeth and go, okay, he misses, and let's get the job done, and let's back in. The impressive nature of this team this year has been the incredible even spread of the group, and Close and Stengel supporting Hawkins and all of those different things. And maybe it's Paddy. We're going to touch on the milestone man soon, but
Gary Rowan, does he come up and play a really
and Dangerfield
role?
might spend 10% more time forward just because Jez isn't playing. So you could also back that in as well. But then it comes down to the communication that the medical staff is providing for you. So it's a huge call. It's unfortunate because Jeremy Cameron has been simply superb this season. Really quickly, with those who are vying for a spot in the team for this last round, but also into finals before we do get to that milestone. The VFL went down on the weekend to Box Hill, unfortunately, and the Cats did lose a couple of players. Sammy Simpson, who's had a tough year coming back from concussion. He went down with a quad strain, as did James Willis as well, first-year player for the Cats. There's a couple of others, though, who played really good football. Asava was best player, which was really good to read. Cooper Stevens missed the weekend's match, but is hopefully going to be available. And then Johnny Segler as well. He exits concussion protocols, so he's possibly right to go for Reece Stanley. There's players there, and there's those pressure for spots. I'm not saying for 1 second you just click the fingers and replace a Jeremy Cameron in a final, but I think the evenness of this team, Domsy, is there this year. It's not reliant on a one-off best game ever from a superstar to be able to win.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and that's the way they've played all year. Although Jez has played, I think he's played every game this year. If not, what's he missed? Maybe one. Look, they're an even spread team. They've been able to, one soldier goes out, one soldier steps up. That's their philosophy, and that's what most good teams do. Especially come this time of year, they've got a group of players, 6 or 7 players that can easily come into the team. Great to see Big Sav best on ground against Box Hill on the weekend because, they might need him with 2 tools going down. Is there an opportunity to play Big Sav? Who knows? But great to see he's in form and put his name forward.
Domsy, we're going to take a little break and get to some fan questions in a second, but I rarely do this, but I'm going to bring up one of the fan questions to just prompt a discussion on the next topic, and that is the 300-game milestone of Patrick Dangerfield, where a little bit later I'm going to talk with his dad, John Dangerfield. We'll get a little bit of an insight about Paddy maybe as a younger guy, but this one's from Wazza on the questions. Domsy, what were your first impressions of a young Pat Dangerfield coming to the Cats?
Oh, he's look, Paddy's like most superstars. He has an aura. He had an aura about him when I first met him. He had a real presence about him, and you could tell that he was going to do something really special during his time at Geelong. So, look, he's been a fantastic addition. I think it's taken Paddy a little time to really understand, and the team for that matter, but premierships aren't handed to us, aren't handed to anyone, and I think there was a little bit of a fait accompli that Paddy is added to the team in the end of 2015. We finished, I think, on top of the ladder or second on the ladder in 2016, get to a prelim against Sydney and get absolutely smashed, I think. And then there's a couple more since then, the Adelaide one in 17. So I think there's a realisation probably for Paddy that, these things aren't just handed out. You have to do more than, just being a great player. And I think that's been his real learning, is how he can influence others and make others better in the team and his leadership around that. And that's where I think Paddy's, we've seen a different Patrick Dangerfield come alive over the last, 2 years. As he's broadened himself out. He sees himself as a more senior guy, which he clearly is, 300 games, 31 or 2-year-old. He's giving back to the team, and that's where you see some real fruits of your labour sort of flourish through. And that's what I'm really loving about Paddy at the moment. He doesn't have to be the guy. He's more of a team guy, but we know what he can do when he needs to.
Yeah, it's a good point you made. That I see that as his growth as well. The fact that Cam Guthrie, Brandon Parfitt, Max Holmes, whoever it might be, can be at any given time the main man, or Tom Atkins in the middle of the ground in his peak years of his footballing ability, and this is what all the great players do, and the superstars across all the sports, Michael Jordan in basketball, whoever it might be. The feeling is, well, here's the moment, it's got to be me. I've got to do everything and it. And Paddy would take that on his shoulders, and sometimes in the game that we've got here, sometimes that's an impossibility because The ball isn't snapped to you like the quarterback gets in NFL. The ball isn't just handed to you and you can dribble it down the court like in basketball. It's a crazy game where there's all those players out on the field and the ball could go any which way. You could be frozen out of a game for 5 minutes and it can't be on you, so it's those around you as well. And I think that's the big evolution of this group, that they are doing it together, and Paddy's certainly part of that. Mind you, he did explode onto the scene when he came to the Cats.
He did.
His first game as a Cat, 43 disposals, which surpassed Greg Williams' record for the most touches in a first game for a new club. Thank you, Troy, for providing those little details for me. But it was pretty amazing, wasn't it? The fanfare of that off-season was massive anyway. And then he just comes on and against the old rivals, he just delivered a huge
game. That was huge. That was a huge.
And took that big mark in the
square. Yeah, that's right. No, he certainly did explode on to the scene, but no, it's been great to watch.
He will play his 300th game. He's still got plenty of years ahead of him.
Yes,
I know he had a couple of injuries with the calf and that this year. But when you see him fit and flying and just getting across that ground, exploding, you go, he's not done yet,
no.
Paddy. And yes.
Well, the X Factor moment, I think for me was a couple of weeks ago against the Bulldogs, when we've already seen what your Cam Guthrie's, your Tommy Atkins, your Parfitts, these guys have all stepped up clearly. But when you can add a passenger player or a player like who's just a wrecking ball, who can come in and absolutely smash the opposition to smithereens in a contest like that, that's the bit that goes, wow. That's coupled with those players who I just mentioned. That's an X factor in the midfield.
You know what I've noticed too, and this is something we forget. You just think Paddy's almost not human. He's so good and so powerful and so big and everything, that he might actually have, coming back from his first block of a layoff of 6 or 7 games, whatever he missed, that he might actually be a little scratchy and he might not have the confidence. In his first game or two back, he was going to his knees a lot and jumping on the ball, which takes away power from his game. That Bulldogs game was the first one where I realised he's back staying on his feet. He now understands again, opposition players are just bouncing off him when he goes through at the ball, staying on his feet. So even he took a couple of games to get back. Now he's back. It's like, whoa, hang on. Yeah. What else does this bring to the team? We're going to talk some more about Paddy a little bit later on. As I mentioned, his dad, John Dangerfield, is going to come and join us and have a chat. We could talk for hours upon hours about Paddy. His highlights tape would be very nice to watch, wouldn't it?
Gee whiz.
It used to be good when there was a milestone and one of the boys who was amazing to watch, they'd put on their highlights of their milestone in the meeting. And sometimes you could sit there and watch it for 20 minutes and just be happy.
Well, you could watch just that game he played against Hawthorn. You could watch that, just his whole edit package, and that'd be enough. But I remember watching his game. Remember that game he played against Adelaide when he was at Adelaide? Adelaide played Fremantle, who were both, I think they were around the mark. Both teams were around the mark at the time. And Fife and Dangerfield went ahead. Can you remember that?
Yes.
I haven't seen a game like that, like 1v1 in the midfield especially, where both were just huge. And that was, I look back at that game and go, wow, this guy is an absolute jet.
And it was two young peak.
It was kind of
like they were almost at their apex, but they were just before it and they were youngish.
Yes.
And both just built like monsters. Yeah, I do remember
Destroyed
that
the game, yeah.
That's a great one. Let's take a break. I want to get to some of our listener questions and then Johnny Dangerfield coming up a bit later on. Welcome back. It is great to have you with us on To the Final Bell, brought to you by Lake Imaging. I want to get to some questions now, Domsy. Yeah. We've already had one from Wazza, which you handled beautifully. Nick poses this one. Is it a worry that our VFL side is finished and we have no match practice for backup players? As a side note for you, Domsy, Chris Scott has said that the club will play scratch matches to keep those players as match fit as possible. Been so many occasions, even going back to the good old days when we were playing together, our VFL team was right there with us all the way. And Richmond's VFL team was winning and going right through to grand finals. Hawthorn's Box Hill team was going through when they won premierships. There's going to be no Cats VFL team playing. Is it a problem?
I think it's not ideal. Definitely, no, it's not ideal. I think it's a great call out, Nick. As you mentioned, Ling, I think you took the words right out of my mouth. Really, you want your VFL team or your second-tier team playing in big games. So the players such as Sava is getting, Sean Higgins, these types, Quinton Narkle, are getting at least a good standard of game in at a level that's clearly not compatible to AFL, but the stakes are high. I get the whole match practice, and that will be suffice, I suppose, because there's no other option. But it's not the same as a VFL final.
Am I right in saying 2007 the Cats won the premiership?
Yes.
You best on ground with 6 goals in the granny?
If you want to mention it, Cameron, I suppose you can. Yes, no, we had a great team, didn't we? We had an unbelievable team. So we were able to get it done against Coburg, and
it was at
5 in the third, Cameron.
5 in the third, yes.
We'll leave that for another. At Optus,
it
was at Optus, yeah.
I do remember that one. 5 in the third. I'd forgotten it was dominant.
Couple of Joe the Gooses.
Hey, they're
not many.
They're in the scorebook.
That's it.
Luke gives us this one. If you could add one more player to this Geelong side going into finals, who would it be? Oh. Just as simple as a fit Jeremy Cameron. One more player. Does he mean? Maybe Luke means from another team, but we can't do that.
I think that.
Oh, he does.
That's how I view the question.
Oh, well.
Take
it out of one of the other contenders.
Yeah, Max Gawn. Can we do that?
Clayton Oliver. Who else? Swans are sneaking up on everyone.
We said it last week.
Yeah.
Has a team gone more under the radar than the Sydney Swans?
And still now. They beat Collingwood. Yep. I'd have Isaac Heaney on any of my teams.
Yep.
I love all the Cats players, and I'm not trying to push anyone out, but I could just sit and watch Isaac Heaney all day long. With Big Sav making a switch down back, could SDK and Sav be future key defenders? That's a good question. This one's from Dominic. Well, SDK, Sam de Koning, is just locked for the next 15 years. Thank you very much. I sort of see Jack Henry as that next other permanent key defender with Tommy Stewart doing what Stewie does best. That's an interesting one on Sav. I don't know.
Yeah, I love that call. And, again, it goes whether this has been Sav's call or coaches have kind of gone, well, how about looking at this? To be able to play ruck, forward, and now defence is, we're getting into Mark Blitzar's territory, aren't we? So you make yourself more versatile. I don't see any reason why I couldn't. At the moment, you're not shifting Hawk out. Jez is obviously there. So you might have to bide your time playing another position. Yeah, I like it. Big, strong key back. They're hard to find. I know that for a fact, speaking to all the recruiters regularly. There's no... in the draft pool, there's no key defenders in the draft pool. It's a great string to his bow if he's able to do that.
You learnt to do it, and one of the most successful in the history of this club in doing it is playing as a forward. You played in, just talking about the VFL grand final, but then played in a grand final as a forward, and then went down back and had an incredible career playing as a defender. So could follow in the footsteps of Tom Lonergan. I like the sound of that.
Better play there.
Shane says, who do you miss playing with most?
Who do I miss playing with the most? I miss all my teammates.
Come on.
But
off field, anyone in particular you just want to hang out with day after day?
Well, no, look, it's hard to go past Stevie Johnson. He was funny, very funny off the field, but he was he was so enjoyable to watch, and just his pure arrogance on the field. He would actually, there was a period when he was at his peak during that sort of 07 to probably 11, 12 period where he would tell you how many stats he would probably get and how many goals. So you'd kind of go in pre-game, go, well, what is it, a possession day or a goal game? No, I'm going to kick me 5 today, Dommer. Call me Domsy. And he would kick 5. He would kick 5. He would say, I'm going to kick my 5. And then, no, that's possession day. I'm going to get up the field. He'd tell you how he's going to play. It was very, very funny and enjoyable to watch.
I'm glad you had that experience. I had to then deal with him in leadership meetings on the Monday.
Yes. So I could just step back and watch him from the defences. Great.
What a player. Yeah. What an incredible footballer. This one is, of the depth players, who is the most versatile to be medi-sub for us in finals? That's a really good question. This one's from Ursula maybe, but Urs.
Jeez,
Mark O'Connor was Medi sub on the weekend.
Yeah.
He does provide flexibility with a midfield, defence, and possibly tagging mindset. Anyone else more versatile?
Yeah, I think you've nailed it there. I think Merrick would probably be the one, given he's played back before. He can play a tagging role, play through the midfield. So he'd be probably one I'm looking at the moment. Or whether it's horses for courses, isn't it? Like we saw a couple of weeks ago, Brisbane played a ruckman as a medi-sub. Don't know if it worked for him. I don't think
know
it
if
would.
it does.
You need to genuinely have a versatile player, don't you?
You're relying on losing it tall.
Yes.
Whether it's a key position or a ruckman, but I don't actually want. I think Mark O'Connor is good enough to be in the 22. Mind you, I'm not sure.
Hang on. I'll ask you a question. Given, say the Cats are to roll the dice and go Jezza Cameron, do they play Sava in as a medi sub? He hasn't played a lot this year.
Shannon Neal.
Well, Shannon Neal, but Sav now he's played his ruck, he's forward, he's back now, doing a bit of back. Does that give you a bit of coverage? Or would you run with,
say, the argument, the debate around that would be, okay, out of our, let's call it highest risk, Jeremy Cameron potentially does another hammy. Yeah. So Sav can go forward. Even if you don't want him to go forward, can he go back and Jack Henry goes and plays as a permanent forward? Reece Stanley, you'd assume he's playing in the qualifying final. If he got his adductor or his knee caused any issues, he could go into ruck. Yeah, it's not a bad suggestion. The only trouble is if it's a mid who goes down, what happens? Yeah. This is why we leave it up to the coaches, Domsy. We just throw ideas up. We don't actually have to make a decision.
Ask a few questions.
I like this. Great question though, Urs. Thank you for that one. Zach poses this one. I have the Cats playing Collingwood, Melbourne, Fremantle in order of most to least likely. Who would the Cats most like to play? So Zach's suggesting that likely the Cats will play Collingwood, who finished fourth, but Melbourne are also a chance to finish fourth, and then Fremantle may be jumping up to fourth, given they've got that draw under their belt. Who would the Cats most like to play in that first final? It'll be at the MCG, as you alluded to before, probably on a Friday night with a possibility of a Thursday night, I suppose, but it tends to be more Friday night for the Geelong crowd to get up there. Who would they most like to play?
You'd probably say Fremantle, given the fact that Collingwood and Melbourne play all their home games there.
Yeah, and it's a Fremantle very good and beat Geelong down here, but they are a younger team who are. I hesitate.
You want to say
this,
the F word? Flaky?
No. I just think.
Are they flaky on the MCG?
No, I just think body-wise,
okay.
Banged up and being younger bodies, they're just spluttering a bit to the end.
Yes,
I think their peak form was that mid-year. I think when they knocked off Melbourne, they were flying across the ground. Maybe they find that for the final. So I'm not writing them off, but it probably steers to them. But I can assure you, internally, the club and the coaches and the players would never look at something like that. Who would we prefer to play? When you're in that zone of feeling really good about what you do as a team, your feeling is genuinely bring on anyone and we'll beat them.
I mean, the only refute to that sort of claim is the fact that Geelong have been on top for now a number of weeks. So they've been waiting to find out who's going to take that fourth position, which no one knows yet. So they will be watching the games closely over the weekend, no doubt.
It's going to be an incredible finish to the season, by the way. I mean,
absolutely.
I hope the Bulldogs beat Hawthorn in that first Sunday game so that Carlton-Collingwood game just becomes an all-time monster.
Yeah.
Carlton needing to win to stay in the 8. And then you've got St Kilda, Sydney after that. If Dogs and Carlton both lose, if St Kilda went all out and could somehow fluke a 10-goal win against the Swans.
I think it's even more than that.
Is it more than 10 goals? Okay, all right.
Someone was saying close to 20.
Right, okay. Well, it might not be mathematically possible then. But with all the permutations that might happen and jump around, there's also one little for the broadcaster side of me working at this potential game. There is a chance that you get a 6th versus 7th matchup in the first week of finals, elimination final, Collingwood v Richmond at the MCG.
Wow.
I want to, even if I'm not working, I'm paying to go to that game, just to see the crowd go bananas. It is shaping up as a huge finish to the year.
Yeah. It's and it's a credit to the AFL, the fact that they've left, and I think they'll continue to do that. It's always been the last 4 or 5 games of a regular season of just, they've floundered, haven't they? They're just mean. They mean nothing. Dead rubbers. Yeah. But credit to them, they've floating fixtures work for them here.
It certainly has. We better take a break. John Dangerfield's walked in the building, so we're going to have a chat with him about Paddy's 300-game milestone. It is a massive game this Saturday twilight. I just had to think of the time there, 4:35 p.m. against the West Coast Eagles. I was just questioning myself whether it was a Saturday night game or a twilight, but it is twilight. 4:35, the last game. I'm sure there'll be a packed house to cheer the Cats on, the last game here, and send them off into the finals and wish them well and celebrate Paddy's 300th game as well. Are you coming along?
I'll be here. It's just saying then, he's flown under the radar, hasn't he, Paddy? Which is unlike Paddy. Yes. He likes to be the number one sort of,
let's ask John about
Johnny. Yes. How he goes with that.
I like it. Let's take a break. John Dangerfield's up next. Welcome back. It is great to have you with us on To the Final Bell, the official Geelong Cats podcast, brought to you by Lake Imaging. As promised earlier on in the show, there's a huge milestone coming up this weekend, Domsy. We didn't want to get Paddy on because, well, Paddy would just talk and just regale us with how good he was and how good he is and how good he's this and that. We want the dirt. We want behind the scenes and all him as a troublemaker kid and all that sort of stuff. So we've invited the father of the milestone man on, John Dangerfield, to join us. John, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Good to be here. Thanks very much.
You are going to dig up the dirt, dish out the dirt, aren't you?
Of course.
It is fantastic. 154 games with the Adelaide Crows, 145, about to be 146 with the Cats to reach that remarkable milestone of 300 games.
And to think he's been such an unbelievable player. But this week it seems as though it's almost been overshadowed because of the whole Alistair Clarkson and North Melbourne and Essendon thing. But he's kind of slipped under the radar, which is
it's fair to say rare for Paddy because he does.
Well, I didn't want to say that, but he has gone under the radar, Paddy, this week. And
John, has he always been somebody who's liked a little bit of the spotlight on him?
Well, in the beginning he was pretty quiet in some ways, but he hasn't minded the spotlight. That's very true. Yeah, growing up, he didn't mind it being on himself.
Grew up in a beautiful part of the world. He often talks about Moggs Creek and obviously playing footy at Anglesea and then going and being taught by the great teachers of Oberon High, yourself included. Tell us about those early years, and was it clear from perhaps his from 10 years of age or teenage years that he had something a little bit special?
Yeah, probably true. He was, the one thing that showed out when he was young is he was a risk taker, and so, which was a really bad thing. My wife Jeanette and I would tell him something and he would go do the direct opposite and end up in hospital with stitches or something. So that's been a characteristic of him, but he's always been pretty athletic when he was a little fella. Although he did, in the early days, he was more interested in his shoelaces as a young boy playing basketball than playing the game itself. But eventually, it did shine through that he could play and he loved the competitive side of it. Yeah.
What we know how good a footballer he's been, and that will be spoken about throughout the week. But what are the other sports he was interested in? Because I know my time at the club, he didn't see much out in the golf course. I know he does a lot of fishing and surfing. Was there any other sports that Paddy was really good at as a young boy growing up?
He loved basketball and still does. Never a cricketer. But tennis, he was, my wife, she loves tennis and all the kids had the licence and we would follow each Saturday, and that was a really important part of him growing up. And he was really good at athletics at school. Not that he ever did anything, but it was something that he was pretty good at and he would enjoy it too.
And where's, I mean, he's so powerful, John, in his speed, and he doesn't need it. I think he looks at a weight and he puts on 10 kilos of muscle. Where does that come from? Where's the...
That is an argument that Jeanette and I have as to who gave him the speed. She would definitely think it was her, and sometimes we do argue about that. But, probably both of us were okay for that, but probably his mother, I think.
All right. Can you take us back? So he's drafted, pick 10, to the Adelaide Crows.
Yeah.
You were a teacher, on a serious note, at Oberon High.
Yes.
He stayed back and continued with his schooling. Can you take us back to those days about, one, him having to move interstate to fulfil his dream of playing AFL footy, but the decision and the wrestling that you would have had to have gone through to keep his schooling going versus just heading over and becoming an AFL player?
Yeah, we were always adamant that he needed to finish his schooling, but did create issues during the year, I must admit. He was a 17-year-old earning as much as some of the teachers who were teaching him. That was quite funny. But during the year, they wanted to play him, and even though this was not a great story in a sense because I broke a few rules, but during the week I'd have to wait for a phone call from Neil Craig, and I had to be able to respond to him, and I'd have to put the phone in the classroom and say to the kids, look, if I get a call from Neil Craig, I'll put the phone up the front. You've got to be quiet because we've got to decide whether he's allowed to play or he's going to play. and I'm not proud of it, I have to say. But the phone would go and the kids would, quick, it's Neil, go at the back. And we would organise what was going to happen. He did play a couple of games in the first year, which was really great fun. The first, of course, is our most memorable probably of any game he's played.
Just one step back from that, John. Can you, in Paddy's draft year, he was at the Footy Factory down at the Falcons there with Mickey Turner. Were you aware of where he sat in the draft pool, and furthermore, being a dad, looking at the teams that were in that bracket that may have been able to nab him in the draft? Because back then, in 2008, seven, there was no swapping of picks, nothing like that. So were you doing the sums as the year went on and trying to work out, it looks like he may be going there, or you're a bit unsure leading into the draft?
No, we were pretty sure what was going to happen. He was a 17-year-old, so Kochi, Jack Stephen, a few of those boys were allowed to be taken as a 17-year-old. But we said right from the start that he needed to finish his schooling, and we wanted him to finish it in Geelong with us. So that was important. But some of the clubs took that very poorly, I have to say. They were really put off by that, and they felt that we didn't have probably a right to say that. But we kept to that. Adelaide always were really keen. Matty Rendell right from the start. But he often played in a back pocket. Buddha played him down back for most of the time, and I think they had to ask for him to play on ball. I'm not sure why, probably teaching him the lessons about defence, I suppose. But then when he played a couple of games on the ball, it was obvious probably that he was going to go. Most clubs were interested in him. Geelong never interviewed us ever, so Stephen obviously had no interest in him, or being Stephen, he was just quietly keeping his powder dry, and we had hoped he would go to Geelong. But, it was interesting, lots of recruiters coming. It was fun, actually. We really enjoyed that part of it.
Can I jump in here, Domsy? Now, you're at the Geelong Falcons and going through that process. Just on Wellesley not talking to Paddy, is that a case of a recruiter having a really clear picture of there's no point because he'll be gone? Because it was 2007, Cats weren't going to have a pick until a later pick, or is that just Wellesley keeping his cards very close to his chest?
I think it's more that one, Cameron, and we saw
100%
as the years roll on. Of course, there was conversations that were taking place for him to come back, but no, Wellesley's got a knack of doing those type of things, hasn't he? But one question on his time in Adelaide, Johnny and Jeanette. How many times how many flights to Adelaide do you think you've had over your journey?
I'd hate to think. I don't know if I could. We would get over there at every single opportunity we could, and we'd probably done 50 road trips on it as well. But in the end, we just gave up on that. That was impossible. I couldn't work out how many, but an incredible number of flights over there. We would go to every game that we could possibly get to, and it was only if it was on a time when it was impossible for us to leave work for me. We've seen most of his career firsthand. We've been really lucky with that. And nowadays we travel interstate if we can to see it, try and see every game.
Can I fast forward to a game down here at GMHBA Stadium against the Adelaide Crows the Cats were playing? It was the final game of
2015.
Matthew Stokes, James Kelly
And Jono.
and Stevie Johnson. Every time Patrick touched the football for the Crows, he seemed to get a big rousing cheer from the crowd here. What was your feeling at that time? Was it, as a family, pretty excited on the idea of that Paddy might end up in the blue and white hoops?
Well, you're never sure about anything, but that was a pretty funny day when I look back, and he actually took a mark in the last moment of the game.
Yep.
And they on the outer wing, they all stood up and clapped. It was, I really didn't know how to feel, but it was kind of nice. And I mean, that's the way that he's been treated ever since he's been to Geelong, which has been wonderful.
Am I right in saying, Domsy, that even Matthew Scarlett treated him nice that day on the field? And he's never done that to any opponent.
No one. But that was one of the most enjoyable games. Obviously, sending off 3 legends, but then the extra theatre of Paddy, and all the hype of him coming home. When did he let you know, or did you have an inkling? I mean, you're his father. You would have had those conversations a year, 2 years prior. When was the time?
Yeah.
Was there a point in time you knew he was keen to come back?
I think once you start thinking about whether you're going to have a family, all the support that's required for that. So we always thought he would come back at some time. And I know he made sure that he gave Adelaide everything that he could possibly when he was there, right to the very last game. So he committed to that club and did everything in his powers. But we had an inkling that he was keen to come back, to be over here, to start the next phase of his life. And so we talked about it. He loves Moggs Creek. He loves living down there. And that was a major part of it, to be part of his larger family as well. It was always going to happen, and we were hopeful that it would happen at that point. But it's pretty tricky to get a trade. Nothing is ever sure, but we were confident he would get through.
And you talk about how he handles the pressure. I still remember that year, Ling. I think he won the best and fairest for Adelaide. He was an All-Australian. He couldn't have done much more that year. And the amount of pressure on him, I remember him walking through the airport. I think it must have been after he'd just come over to Melbourne, or he was on the way back from the Brownlow or something, and the cameras were all around him. He just handled it so well, and he did it with dignity, which was fantastic.
Because every conversation was around, will he come home? Are you coming home? And he still played incredible football. So to put that aside and play that great football was really remarkable. I watch him play and think that, he plays just like an animal at times. The way he attacks the ball in the air, the way he attacks the ball on the ground, the way he does... I think his body must be so smashed to pieces at times. Probably don't want you to think about that too much because you worry about him. But to get to 300 games having played the way that he plays, it's pretty remarkable.
It's funny, Jeanette and I have never worried about him on the field ever. Even when he was a little kid, he's played the exact same way from when he was 11. So there's no difference in that. And he's very fierce, and it's astonishing that he can have the power that he can go down and lift and carry a number of players off and shrug them. But we've never worried about it. We've never worried about the injury part of it. But it does amaze me that the style of game that he plays is unusual, and you don't often see players able to get 300 games out of their body. So, but he's very strong, and he's never lifted a weight much at all. No. And he's been like that forever. He's just fortunate to have the DNA which have allowed him to be strong, powerful, and he's got a single-mindedness and when it's attack on the ball. Joel is amazing to me when we see him, and once we've come to here, his will. I've never seen anybody with will as like his, but Pat has just determination, which is probably similar but different. and his attack is just ferocious.
Even that Western Bulldogs game recently, there was that one contest here, and he just went through. I thought, almost cringing, just stop, and then he explodes through, and bodies are flying everywhere. Yeah, it's great to watch.
He's had a bad habit when he was younger that he often would crash into the goalpost. A couple of really heavy hits to goalpost where he was just reckless. And that, thank goodness, he has improved. I don't know what was going to... the goalposts weren't going to survive, or he wasn't.
John, I was just reading the Geelong Advertiser this morning, and Paddy touched on Phil Welsh and him as a captain when the whole incident went down, and he spoke about how he had a meeting with him at Henley Beach the night before, and then the next night he had a knock on the door from David Noble, telling him he'd been stabbed. How was that period of time, and as a parent, and being in Victoria, and how did Paddy deal with that post? All the amount of pressure that would have been on the footy club and the players, and it was just such a harrowing time.
It makes me sad just thinking about it right now. Jeanette and I, we were in disbelief when we found that out. I do remember that, and Emma Barr, who looked after the welfare of the players at the time, and most astonishing person I've ever met in that role in any club, was able to sort of galvanise them. I don't know how they did it, to be truthful. It's the story in itself, just when you hear it for anybody, and let alone know them well and be part of their life. I still remember the West Coast game, which was the first game after it, and they came off, and even now I feel sad when I think about it. But they're an amazing bunch of boys, and how they handled it, I don't know how Pat did, to be truthful. It's something he's just steeled himself, because they loved him. He was a real personality, quite different coach from other coaches, but it was a really tough time for them, and I still don't know how they were able to work past that, I suppose.
We've got to let you go, but just one final one. Do you allow yourself to think ahead to the next few weeks? I mean, you look through everything that Paddy's worked towards and everything that he commits himself towards. He wants to win a premiership. Do you, as parents, allow yourself to start thinking, oh, hang on, there's something special on the horizon here, or are you a little bit nervous letting your mind get away that far ahead?
No, we're never nervous, and we do talk a lot of football, sadly. Like, it's only Jeanette and I listening to each other. But this year's different. It's the exact same group of players, so it's no difference in the players. But the way the team's been set up by Chris and Nigel and all the boys, they are so committed as a team, and everybody's equally important. Everything is shared. This year feels, I don't want to say it, but it feels different. And it feels incredibly positive. So if we're ever going to be the team that we are, and the success it'll be this year, I feel.
I like it, John. I think Domsy and I both share similar thoughts to what you're articulating there. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing those memories and thoughts on Paddy. Enjoy the game on Saturday against the Eagles. No doubt, I'd say there'd be a fair contingent from Moggs Creek coming up to watch the game.
Yeah, we've got to just get that planning finalised this afternoon.
How many tickets?
That's what we're discussing at the moment, see how many the club can get. It's a bit tighter at GMHBA. Yeah. You can't always get what you want. In Adelaide, it was always good. I could get 40. I think our record was 46 tickets, but it's a bit tighter here, so we'll have to see how that is.
We needed the new stand finish to bring all the crew down. But enjoy the game on Saturday. It's a fantastic milestone, and hopefully a pretty special end to the year as well. Thanks, John.
Thanks very much, boys.
Great to have a chat with John Dangerfield there. Jeanette was in the room as well. I kind of wanted to get Jeanette involved as well. I think
could have kept going if Jeanette was,
might have told a few more stories there. But it's a remarkable milestone. It'll be a fantastic game on the weekend against the West Coast Eagles. A nice little tune-up for the finals. Obviously, you've got the bye week and then the qualifying finals. It'll be a great celebration for Patrick Dangerfield. Hopefully, well, it will be a great celebration on a terrific home and away season. And then on to the real stuff, Domsy.
Yeah, the exciting stuff starts, Cameron. Not far away. Get through this week. We did have a little injury setback there with Jeremy, but We've got a week off after this week and then into the big stuff, so we can't wait.
Absolutely. We'll be back with you again next week. Thank you for all those people who sent questions in. Keep those coming. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week to talk more footy in the lead up to a massive final series.